Should that clicked over? Okay, we got it.
Perfect.
We'll wait for a minute to see if anybody jumps in and joins us. I should share it out now that we're actually live.
No.
We always do this. Why won't you click? Come on. Computer, what are you doing? What are you doing to me? There we go.
Technology.
Seriously. Some days. Hello, hello. Say hi when you get here. Hi, Super Roommate, and hi to you, Lindsay.
Oh, I should probably switch over the right chat.
Now that there's some people here, let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what we're talking about today, we are talking about Winter by Marissa Meyer. This is the 4th book in the Lunar Chronicles series. So beware of spoilers if you haven't read the series, because April and I have like no self-control and
None.
this book without spoilers, because there's so much going on within this book. And in this one, it's kind of the culmination of everything that we've talked about in the last 3 videos. And I'm just genuinely excited to get into this discussion. So, April, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself? I guess we're bad at that when we do this.
It's true. We kind of just
we're
like
really
jump
bad at that. We just jump in and go. So since we're still kind of waiting for a few people, why don't you go ahead and do an introduction, and then we'll get into the meaty discussion.
Okay, so I'm April from the channel April Sarah, and of course I am co-host of Tell It Again with lovely Shay here. I don't know what else is interesting. I mean, I've got my booktube channel, and I do coloring on said channel, and just all kinds of random nonsense and whatever comes to my brain. But otherwise, it's mostly related to books somehow.
And your most popular video is your Book Roses video.
Oh yeah, that is getting
DIY cuteness.
2 mil.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding! It's that much?
Yeah, I think it's at like 1.7 right now.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Right?
Like, I don't have a single video anywhere near that.
Yeah, it's not something I ever thought was gonna ever happen on my channel, especially that video. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if people are
that was while you were prepping for your wedding, right?
Mm-hmm. It was mainly for my mom.
There you go.
She knew how to make the flowers.
It's like, here, Mom, this is how you do this. Yes, you do have the Nay kids as well.
I do. One of them is on my lap, so if you hear random noises, that's
random little purs or little
from the cat.
I call them, because it's like they purr a little and then they just make one little loud noise. I call those purr barks. I don't know why. I always have
the little meows.
Mm-hmm. It's like the little purr and then just that little tiny like short meow. So it's just like a bark rather than a big long meow. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, let's go ahead and start discussing winter. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Sure. I don't even know where to start, because this is the culmination of all those little bits and pieces, all those strings, because we had Scarlet, who was a prisoner of Luna. We have Winter, who is slowly going crazy. Jason's finally back with her.
Mm-hmm.
We got Thorn, who is starting to get his eyesight back. And then we have Kai, who decides that to make all of these plans come together, he's going to agree to marry Levana.
Oh.
Which is probably the most anxiety-inducing part of this story.
Oh my gosh. Both times I've read this book, during that wedding scene, I chucked the book across the room. Like, I just can't help myself, because I'm so frustrated and angry that I'm just like, hiya!
Yeah, you want timing to work
on the corner here from throwing it. Like, I legitimately threw it.
Threw it across the room. Yeah, because I mean, both the wedding, because there's the wedding and the coronation in this book. And for both of them, even though I knew what was going to happen because this is a reread, you hope that the timing works out, that Cinder or anybody else shows up at the right time and makes sure that like none of this happens.
Right.
But of course, they do end up married, and she does end up being the empress for like that long.
A hot minute.
Yeah, that's the part of this book that
I was so mad that was the decision that Meyer made. I'm like, really? Come on. We did not have to have them legitimately married. Like, it's not okay. I was so not okay either time I read it.
And it was interesting because I think the first time I read it, I didn't expect it to happen because you're so used to in YA and this kind of fairy tale retelling that things work out correctly. That when all of a sudden things are like, well, how are you going to get out of this one? Because it has to have a happy ending. Because I mean, this isn't going to exist. It doesn't have a happy ending.
It's a fairy tale retelling. Of course, it has to have a happy ending. Unless it's one of those tragic fairy tales, and then we're prepared.
Yeah, and so the fact that she didn't give us what we expected was really, really nice, even though I hated it so much.
Yes, it was refreshing yet frustrating. I think is for me to like put it into words.
I do also have to say that I had forgotten how much of the Snow White fairy tale there was in this.
Is actually present. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as I was rereading it. I'm like, wow, there's a lot more Snow White in this than I remember.
And I think I read it so quickly the first time around because I read it in a day.
I inhale read the first one.
Right.
The first go around.
Yeah, and then you start to pick up that you have Jason who is tasked with killing Winter.
He's the huntsman.
And then you have Winter who is infected by the queen, is in a sense poisoned by the queen, and then she's put into that stasis chamber in hopes that it won't spread quickly. And then I don't know, it was nice to see all that, even though I had forgotten all of that.
And I think that's been the biggest thing throughout this reread that we've been doing for this book club, is that some of those finite details got lost for me in the time I'd read it, because I hadn't touched it since Winter had come out. I hadn't touched any of these books since then. So it's been years. And so as we were going through it, I was just like floored with, one, how connected all of her overarching story was from the beginning to the end. Like, she had this thoroughly planned out before she started writing it. It's very clear and very apparent. Really, Light Song? Noisy.
The cats
he's being a pain. I have Instagram props like on the ground, and he's decided that he wants to try to eat them. Well, I have to actually like stop him. Okay. So talk about something from the book while I do this.
Okay, I'm gonna take a drink real quick.
Excuse me, sir.
The joys of being a cat mom for both of us. But no, I mean, this is by far the biggest book of this series, and it's very much, you can tell why it was, because we had so many different storylines coming together. And hi, can I help you? And there's just there's so much, and there's so many cute things, because this is also the book where we started kind of talking about this when we were doing the buddy read of this, but when we're introduced to Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny, and
I never put, because it'd been so long since I read Winter and then I read Wires and Nerve, like I never put together that we met him in Winter. It was just some random new person. Like I never put it together that we'd already met him.
Well, and that he had such a significant plot point.
Yeah.
He was the one who made sure that Winter got out after realizing that, hey, she's not dead like the queen said. And then he's the one who kept his mouth shut. He's the one who let Cress go.
Mm-hmm.
when Jason and Cress were discovered.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he had a lot more backstory than I remember than just the graphic novel series that comes later.
Yeah. I think that's another thing is on this second read, I was much more accepting and relaxed of the ending than I was the first time I read it. Because the first time I read it, I had certain expectations of the ending, and I didn't get those until I read Stars Above in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Reading it again and getting that final culmination of your Cinderella, which I had forgotten as well, with the foot instead of a shoe. Right. It was one of those things that I was much more okay with how it ended than I was initially. It felt,
yeah, because I mean, you, it didn't feel like closure last time,
but it felt like closure this time. So
right,
it,
I think it's
because do it that way.
You did get those additional books, and it's more like, okay, so she left it a little more open here, so that A, there was room for more, and B, so that it wasn't about the final points for the characters. It was about the final points of the storyline
of the story and the world. Yeah.
So it was all about Levana and then the end of Levana.
Yeah, rather than the perfect ending to a fairy tale, you know? And I liked that better. So let's take a minute and let's talk about each coupling, because we have 4 couplings and I want to talk about them all. So let's start at the beginning. We'll start with Cinder and Kai. What are your thoughts by the end with Cinder and Kai?
So I remember connecting a little bit more with Cinder and Kai the first time around, and I think it's because they were the characters that all of this started with, and so at that point I had the most invested in them. And you did slowly get to see the relationship come together, but it was interesting this time around for me. It didn't feel as heavy as it did the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because I didn't have as much as invested in it, and I could see where these guys were more focused on their countries, their citizens, than they were on each other. And you can kind of feel that. You can see some of that distance a little bit more, at least on my reread. So whereas before they started out as one of my favorite relationships, I can't necessarily say that anymore.
I would have to agree with that. Like, I felt like I was actually much more frustrated with Kai on this second read through the entire series. And I felt like he was too easily forgiven, is another thing. And if I was ranking these 4 couples, Kai and Cinder at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're the one you're introduced to first, as a romantic pairing, they are the weakest of the 4, in my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely less emotion behind their coupling than there is behind some of the other ones.
And when you think about it that way, that might also be in a cultural representation kind of way, because in a lot of Asian cultures, they're not outwardly affectionate.
Right.
And they're much more reserved that way. So that might be part of why that was her choice. But still, with a fairy tale retelling, I needed a little more. Like, it just didn't feel quite right to me. Like,
yeah.
I needed it. I needed it to feed my soul a little bit more.
And it's surprising how little story time together they have.
Lizzie's comment. So much Kai complaining when I was reading this with you both.
True.
We were all complaining about how Kai was a butt. Like, that's just legitimately what was happening while we were reading this. So many days it was like, Kai's still a butt. Wake up, dude. But yes, so I guess on that note, let's move on to the next pairing, which is Scarlet and Wolf.
So this one you can definitely see more of a passion with. And a little bit more of learning to accept oneself, especially when you've got no control over what ends up happening to you.
Right. And not only accepting oneself, but accepting someone who is visibly different than you is another way to look at that. And I think Meyer did an excellent job on both points. As you know, especially by the end where Wolf was physically different, not just, beefed up. Like he got to a point where he had a snout, like he looked like a wolf. And it's one of those things where Scarlet still cared about him and loved him and just kind of loved through all things. And I thought that was really well represented. Like, of all the couplings, they would probably, as hard as it is for me to say, they're probably the number one pairing because it was much more like visually emotional. And I have a thing for broken heroes. Like, it's just a trope that I love. And you'll see that in the rest of this list as well. But especially with Wolf, the first time I read through the series, I did not enjoy this coupling very much. I just wasn't into it the first read through. I can't even tell you why now. I just wasn't. And on this second read, I was like, man, I really like them. And I think part of it was they spent so much time apart the first read through that I didn't get enough of them together. But for some reason, this time I did. And I think just seeing Wolf like almost mourn Scarlet as if she were dead at a certain point, like it just made me love him more. Like he was always a character I really enjoyed, but I appreciated them as a couple much more on this second read.
They definitely felt like they had a stronger bond
than anybody else. But you can chalk that up to the animal instincts too.
Yeah. I mean, outside of Winter and Jason.
Because they had the childhood friends thing going.
Yeah.
Which is another trope I really like.
And see him. Like, I think, okay, so part of me, I don't think Scarlet and Wolf are my favorite. They are probably right after Cinder and Kai, if I'm honest, just because.
Interesting.
Crest and Thorn, the dynamic there.
Crest and Thorn.
It me smile, and I think it's more because of Thorn. But then I
love Crest and Thorn. Like they're easily, like honestly, it's probably a tie, honestly, between Scarlet and Wolf and Crest and Thorn because I really enjoy Crest and Thorn for multiple reasons.
Right, because I mean, they grew each other, which is nice because Crest grew in confidence and Thorn grew to be a better human being.
Right. So they helped uplift each other rather than just healing each other. Like it was more. And I loved that it was more. Well, now that I think about it, I should have had this.
It's hard because
it's really hard to choose because
really
there's a lot that I really like, but Cinder and Kai are probably at the bottom for me, if I'm honest. Like they're just not the strongest pairing out of these four. But Crest and Thorn, my little young heart, like Crest as a human being I love, and Thorn as a human being I love. And I love how he protects her innocence as much as he can while he's with her. But at the same time, he understands that she wants to like live her own life and gives her things that he can. Like that first very romantic kiss when he thought they were going to die. Like, made sure she got little things to help her live. And I loved that so much about them. Like he wanted to give her the life she always wanted and deserved to have, even though he didn't feel like he was worthy of her, like ever. Like even at the end, he's still kind of questioning it, and you can see that. And
that ending was absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
That was be part of my crew.
Yes. And it's just really sweet. I love them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
But I also really love Winter and Jason. I love
mhm.
good friends
Well, 'cause
trope.
there's
I
just
love
so
the bodyguard and the princess trope. Like
yeah.
there's so many good tropes with,
Uh-huh.
and I love that he loves her no matter what's going on with her mind and if she chooses to take care of it or not. Like he just loves her.
Mhm.
That.
He's there to support her in whatever happens and whatever choices she makes, barring hurting herself.
Right. As long as it's not going to cause her harm, he wants to support her in any way he can. And that feels like real life to me. I mean, that's what I do with my husband. That's what he does for me. As long as we're not like outwardly hurting ourselves or going to cause like harm to our livelihood, like we are very supportive of each other in whatever we want to do. I mean, I wouldn't have a channel without his support. And like, I just really love that they are that way because it feels real to me. Like, it doesn't feel fictional.
Mhm.
Other
Very
pairings all feel kind of fictional, but theirs is the most like grounded in reality, I guess, is the easiest way to kind of like describe that.
yeah, because a lot of the other relationships outside of the 5th pairing that started in this book and ends in the
Uh-huh.
graphic novels,
Right.
all of them happen because of extreme circumstances,
Hmm.
whereas Winter and Jason just are.
Right. And I
And
love
they did life together since they were very little, and so I think there's a little bit more of that realness and something that I can see actually happening more than, being thrust into this very extreme adventure that,
right.
as cool as it is, how many of us are actually going to be fighting a big bad like that?
Yeah. In reality, big bads aren't quite like that. There are characteristics of Luvanna that are very realistic for people's real life big bads. And I think that's part of what makes her such a great villain
Mhm.
in this series because she was very selfish and she did whatever she had to do to get to the top. There are lots of people in this world that are like that, where they will sacrifice anyone and anything to get what they want. And so I think that made Livana feel like a real villain, not this mustache twirly, fakey,
Yeah.
cartoony villain. She did not feel that way, and I know Ferris was written to help you like understand Livana, but it just made me hate her more. I can't lie.
Yeah, I mean, it made you understand some of the backstory that's really helpful into understanding Winter and her
And her
connection to
relationship with Lana.
and
Hmm.
Jason and his connection into everything and why Lavana is a little at Jason because
Yeah,
ultimately it's a reflection of what she had wanted in her previous life, but
right,
she didn't get it. But Winter seems to be getting everything that Lavana had ever wanted,
right.
which she had the beauty and then she had the love of Jason.
Hmm. And the
And
love of Celine before Celine went away.
right, and the love of the people without really
Right,
doing anything.
right. And that's just it. She had the love of the people just by being herself
Mhm.
and try to put on a face or a facade. And if Lavana had let herself just be herself without being so power hungry, she could have been a great ruler.
Mhm.
One of those things that, because of certain things from her background, it altered the way she looked at the world and the way she looked at life. And that just makes it hard to love her.
Very much so.
And this. I
Well,
agree.
at least
So,
she keeps
yeah,
going back to that page and then she can repeatedly be thrown out the window.
exactly. So, yes. So, okay, now that we've talked about all of the like core ships, I'm gonna have to rate them, and I want you to rate them too, 1 to 4.
Okay.
Um, okay, I think it has to be Winter and Jason because they're the most realistic. Then Cress and Thorn because I just love them. Then Scarlet and Wolf, and then Cinder and Kai.
Yep.
I think that has to be my order.
Where I sit with Aiko and Kenny maybe over top of here because
I really like them too. But that is something for another day because that wires and nerve. I don't know. Maybe we'll just breed wires and nerve again and then just do a live show for that because we can. It will be a specific to tell it again. I don't know. It's been really fun to be back in this world. I can't lie. And we get to see so much more of Luna in this book that I really loved seeing how the city actually functioned. That was always something that in the first 3 books, you just kind of hear little bits and pieces about, like you don't really understand until winter when you're actually on Luna and you get to see everything that's going on.
I would love
a really, really cool city.
Yeah, I would love a history.
I need a movie, I need a TV show, I need something.
That just how Luna started and how these abilities came into being.
Just right. I need an origin story, please.
Right. Because I mean, I wanted that more than I wanted Levana and her backstory. Because I'm like, why do these people have this ability?
There's Lindsay's ratings.
And that doesn't surprise me.
That doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah.
She loved Scarlet and Wolf from the Oh. Yes, we totally understand. For those of you who aren't aware, Lindsay has buddy read the entire series with us. This was her first read through, and April and I were rereading it. And so it's been really fun to like vicariously live through the initial reactions with her. Like, it just made this reread all the more fun for me. Just because seeing that initial reaction when you kind of know what's coming. I mean, there were definitely parts of winter that I did not remember. Like, there's a lot of those finer details, like the time in the finer details of the interactions in the jail that Winter had Scarlet in and things like that. And like just some of those finer details just had gone away from me, and it was so fun to revisit those.
Oh, my heart,
Lindsay, I love you. I'll find you some werewolf romances, I promise. But yes, I still love this book a whole lot. I still give it 5 stars. Like, my rating's not changing on it.
Mm-mm.
If anything, it's a more solid of a 5-star now than it was on my first read for me.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely now feel the finer details that came into place.
Oh, God, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, when I read through that the first time, I did not realize all of the things that she had dropped hints about in Cinder, in the first book. And how much, like, the web she wove with this was just insane. And it was so fun to revisit. This is definitely a series I will continue to revisit over the years just because it's fun. Agreed. You know, I don't care if it's geared at teenagers. I still think it's fun, and I'm still going to read it.
Always. I mean, I still watch Disney movies, so why wouldn't I
go back so do I.
Read these kind of stories?
And, you know, my current obsession is a anime series about high school volleyball boys. I mean, this is just my life. This is just my reality. I'm watching it through for a 6th time. Something is literally wrong with me.
Oh, nice.
And that's in like a 2-month period. Like,
well, something just resonated with you in that. And that's okay.
For me with that one, just my little side tangent here for Haikyuu, for those of you who aren't aware of the title. It's helping me get through all this like isolation, the world has gone to crap life. Because it's about realistic people with realistic problems who come together through a sport. And I really experienced that in high school with Color Guard. And my marching band and Color Guard friends that are still dear friends to me this day, like, we just all had this amazing connection. And so I relate to that on a deep level, that part of the story. But then the way that they've done all of the action sequences for the games and the matches is just chef's kiss so good. Oh my goodness. Like, it's so good. And it has the best soundtrack behind it as well. Like, it's got that epic feel, and it's just so good. Like, oh, they're all my precious children, and I want them to. That is just what it is. Like, even like the other teams, like not just the main Karasuno boys, like I care about all of them.
I love that.
It's insane. I should not care this much. I really shouldn't, but I do because they're fantastic. And my poor husband is sick of me watching this show.
That's okay. My husband keeps falling asleep every time I turn on various different K-dramas. Because
there you go. But yeah, so anyhow, do you want to announce our June pick? Since
yes.
We're done with the Lunar Chronicles. To like message each other earlier in the week, it's like, okay, what are we gonna do? We're done with this. We have to decide now. We have to make decisions.
Yes. So next month we are going to be reading, I believe it is the Dead Queens Club.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? I can't remember off the top of my head who it's by.
I'll try to drop a link in the chat so that people have it.
It is by Hannah Capin. And it is a loose retelling of Shakespeare, if I remember correctly. Henry VIII, which is a play.
But I believe it kind of has like a little bit of Mean Girls mixed into it as well.
Yeah. So you kind of get in a mix of everything, and it sounded like a good summer read, and it's slightly different than the retellings that we have done. So I thought it's a good change up.
All right. By the way, there's that.
And I will admit, I haven't ever made it all the way through Henry VIII. I've only ever read bits and pieces and acted out bits and pieces of it. So it might be something that do a little bit of a read up on as we're reading it. But
yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm probably going to reread it. I have a complete works of Shakespeare, so I'm probably going to at least like skim through it before I read. Just so that everything is fresh.
Right. And then you can pick out all the little elements and get excited about
one of these days. Like, I'm going to convince you to read like the first like 4 or 5 volumes of Requiem of the Rose King for this. It is Henry VI and Richard III mashed up into one story, and it's so good. Beautiful. I mean, so beautiful. That's just a cover, let alone what's actually inside. This is volume 11, so I can't show you what's inside.
Spoilers.
Spoilers galore. Yeah, very much spoilers. I'm like, I can't. There's not even like an okay panel to show. Because it's so deep in now. But volume 1 is very buried right there. So I'm like, I can't quite reach it. But anyhow, I'm really excited for the Dead Queens Club. I think it's going to be fun. It'll be a different kind of story than what we've been doing with the Lunar Chronicles. So I think that'll shake things up enough for people that it'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So next month will be on April's channel.
I believe it's the 28th.
Yeah. Last Sunday of the month, same time. We are creatures of habit. It'll always be the last Sunday at this same time. And it'll be either on her channel or mine. So as long as you're subbed to both of us, you won't miss.
It's true.
And April is linked in the description down below. So if you have not followed April, you definitely should. And I think that's everything. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about with Winter?
I don't think so.
I think it was just, yay, I'm happy it came together amazingly. And that, like, towards the end, we all actually ended up, like, reading the last 100 pages instead of breaking it up into 2 days like we normally would. Because when we buddy read it, we do about 50 pages a day. But we all blitz through the end because it's like, okay, like, we just got to keep going. Now.
I can't stop here.
Intense. It was so, like, it was written in a way that you didn't want to put it down. And I loved that. I love when books end strong like that, where you just want to put it down and you don't really want it to be over. But I felt much more okay with everything wrapping up this time. I think that's the only other thing I wanted to say. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. So we will wrap this up. And again, thanks for stopping in. If you're new, subscribe, click the bell, do the thing. And make sure you check out April's channel because she's fantastic. And you have to see how her dream library is going to turn out. That vlog series very fun.
I'm hoping
so
to have
definitely
the next installment of that series this
Yay!
week.
That would be fantastic. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Because I got on my phone, so I'm not going to say anything, but
show people this.
all right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.